Breaking news, the U.S. Attorney's Office is holding a news conference right now to announce that more than 40 alleged local gang members have been arrested. Let's listen in.
Court, charging over 40 individuals with racketeering conspiracy, drug offenses, firearms offenses, and financial crimes, including COVID fraud and brazen organized retail theft. The defendants charged today are members and associates of the Heath Street gang, which, as alleged in the court documents, has been operating for many years in and around the Mildred C. Haley apartments in Jamaica Plain. This morning, nearly 24 members and associates of the Heath Street gang were arrested, and several other individuals who are in state and federal custody have now been charged in federal court with new offenses. In addition to the arrests, over 60 firearms were seized in the course of this investigation. Firearms that were used in illegal conduct, such as shootings, and firearms that were illegally possessed. The defendants charged in the racketeering conspiracy have been alleged to have been involved in 3 separate murders and multiple shootings. Some of those shootings left innocent victims in crossfire, including a 9-year-old girl who was severely injured attending a family gathering. Now, I think most of you are aware that the statistics around shootings and murders in Boston have continued to drop, and a ton of people deserve credit for that. But if you live in a community that's threatened with violence on a daily basis, the citywide numbers don't mean nearly as much. When you're living in a community that's racked with threats of violence, it's your daily existence. And for the people who living in the Haley apartment buildings, they were surrounded by these gang members and associates who were engaged in this conduct. And they bragged about their violence on social media and in texts. And you can see from some of these photos, they carried high-powered weapons, they made gang signs and mocked gang rivals. One of these pictures shows defendant Ja'Carri Lyons to my left, holding what's essentially a machine gun. It's a Glock semi-automatic pistol retrofitted with a Glock switch in the back that turns it into a fully automatic weapon. These defendants also produced music videos to allegedly promote themselves and denigrate rival gangs. In some videos, they bragged, as the documents allege, about murders the gang had committed. One line from a rap video allegedly talked about victims of the gang violence. And it says, and I quote, "I can say the names, but I might make the feds come for us." Well, the feds have come for you, and we showed up with our federal, state, and local partners in a highly coordinated effort to root out violence, stop gun and drug trafficking, and bring peace to this public housing development. Now, the case isn't only about violence. As you'll see in the court papers, we've alleged both COVID fraud and retail theft. Some of the defendants received thousands of dollars in fraudulent unemployment assistance. One defendant applied for unemployment assistance, as alleged, in 10 separate states: Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, even applied for employment assistance in Guam. There are 23 separate employment claims submitted, as alleged in the indictments, fraudulently for a company called Married to the Mop. And they submitted letters of verification that are identical and, as alleged, are fraudulent. All told, the COVID fraud in this case is over $900,000. And as you'll see in one of these posters here, the defendants bragged about buying over 100 guns with their COVID fraud money, money that was designed to help people who are dealing with the pandemic. And also on the financial crimes, the indictments allege bold retail theft, walking into stores like Nordstrom's, Victoria's Secrets, Sunglass Hut, grabbing thousands of dollars of merchandise, threatening security personnel who came up, walking out the front door with all those goods. And lastly, before I close and turn it over to my colleagues here, there's one other important aspect of this case. It involves the use of juveniles to engage in the conduct alleged in these criminal complaints and indictments. Use of juveniles as lookouts, use of juveniles to hold guns and drugs, use of juveniles to engage in shootings. And that is a problem we're hearing about from urban police chiefs across Massachusetts and, frankly, across the country. The honest, law-abiding people who live in the Haley apartments want the same thing we all want. They want to be able to send their children off to school, out to play, without fear that they're going to be hurt or recruited into a gang. And as alleged in these indictments, there are instances where parents tried to intervene and tried to engage with the police to help get their children away from the gang. And the defendants in this case tried to intimidate and prevent that action from happening. And as Commissioner Cox is going to share in more detail, the Boston police are going to be back at the Haley apartments this week, engaging with the community, talking to the juveniles, trying to get them into programs and services to steer them away from what they've been exposed to. But the message we want to leave for the mother who tried to intervene and get her kids away from the gang, for all the mothers and fathers and grandparents and guardians, is we're here. We're going to work tirelessly to root out these kind of problems. And we're not going to rest until we get those numbers that I talked about in terms of shootings and murders as low as possible. And lastly, an unequivocal message to anyone engaged in this type of conduct, that we're going to work together and we're not going to cease our efforts